So I can vividly remember a time in my life when I would pray, like literally pray for the things that I have in my life right now. Specifically, a relationship or a husband that just loved me unconditionally, treated me well, someone that would just really be a part of my family and just no drama and yeah, just somebody who just would love me for me. That was something that I didn't have for a really long time in my life and something that I at one point wasn't sure if I would ever have. And having a family, having kids, like that was something that I just pretty much gave up on at one point when I was in my early 30s. I was not in a very good relationship, and I was with somebody who I knew probably wasn't going to work out long term. So I started making myself believe that I was okay with not finding my person, not getting married, not having kids or having a family. I was like, you know what? I'm fine without those things. But I was really lying to myself because now that I have those things, thank God, I can't imagine my life without them. And I look at my life then and I look at my life now, and that's why I hold on so tightly to the things that I have now. I have such strong boundaries with my work life, and there's nothing that comes before my family. I work really hard so we can just have a beautiful life together. I'm so protective of my family, of my husband, of my son, and it's because I am so grateful for those things. And there was a time when I didn't have them and I didn't think I would ever have them. And I'm so grateful for the things that I've been blessed with. And so yesterday I received a letter in the mail from somebody from my past, and it really brought back a lot of those feelings that I felt back when I was in my 20s, and I was in a really toxic, abusive relationship with this person. And this is somebody that I would never want to see ever again. And so hearing from him was definitely unexpected, and it was disturbing to me, to say the least. This person is in prison for life for murder. I was not with him at the time that he committed murder. We had been broken up for about 2.5 years when I found out about this. And this was in about 2004. So it's been a little over 20 years since he's been in prison. And he has never reached out to me before. He's reached out to my mom. I'm not exactly sure why. For some reason, he feels some sort of connection with her. She was always very nice to him because, she's just a very nice person in general. But this has caused a lot of fights between me and my mother because she is a very, Christian, forgiving, loving person. And although that is great and everything, I know that this person is very manipulative, and I just don't believe that he could, change that much, just given the circumstances and given his personality and just who he is as a person. I don't believe that even 20 years in prison is necessarily going to change kind of person that he is. And so I just was very adamant about my mom not responding to anything that he would send her. I believe at one point when my parents still had a landline at their house, he would call, collect, and she would sometimes pick up. And I know that caused a lot of arguments between she and my dad. And then when I found out about it, I would definitely go the fuck off because I just want him to go away and I want nothing to do with him. And so I was very disturbed yesterday when I received a letter from him, not only because it was, just unexpected, but the fact that he had my address. I don't know how he got my address. I'm assuming he looked me up somehow online and got it that way. But that alone rubbed me the wrong way, and I automatically felt uneasy about that because my worst nightmare is him getting out of prison and knowing where I live. That's one of my biggest fears. Not that I think he would do me any harm, but I just would never want him to unexpectedly show up at my house with my husband, with my son. That is like one of my worst fears. I don't believe he will ever get out of prison. He is in prison for life, but I do know that that only means 25 years before he's up for parole, which is, I think, in a few years. I really haven't kept up with it, kept tabs on him, but I believe that means like in either 2029 or 2030, he's up for parole. I pray that he never sees the light of day. He doesn't deserve it. And so, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit today of my story. It really has made me the person that I am today. And I'm so confident in myself and protective of myself because of the things that occurred in my past. This relationship being a huge part of that. And this relationship led me into other toxic relationships because I was so low after being in this relationship. It knocked me down so bad that I look back and I don't recognize who that person was. I feel bad for that person. I wish I could, just give that person a hug because she was very sad and not confident in herself and thought that she wasn't worthy of love, and she was depressed. And yeah, so we are going to talk about that today because I think it's important, especially if you are someone who is maybe in an unhealthy relationship or an abusive or toxic relationship, and you think that this is just the way that it has to be, or this is just what your relationship is going to be like. This is what you deserve. This is what you're settling for. And it doesn't have to be that way. Believe me, I wish that I knew then what I know now. So, thank you for joining me today. And yeah, let's jump in. Is this mic on? Ugh, I'm so bad with fucking technology.
Mommy, you said the F word.
Sorry, babe. Welcome to Mommy, You Said the F Word. I'm your host, Sarah Goldsboro. I've experienced firsthand the messy, magical, and sometimes maddening world of motherhood. We'll share some laughs and shed some tears as I dive deep into the highs and lows of life, confront loss, chat about career, fitness, creating a life you love, finding yourself again after kids, and who the fuck knows what else. This is a space where authenticity reigns supreme. So get ready to strip away the BS and get candid as fuck. So when I think back And I am not going to say this person's name. We'll refer to him as D. But when I look back at the night that I met this person, I do believe that I was not supposed to meet him. I do believe that God was trying to prevent me from meeting him, because there was this place that my friends and I used to go to. And this is when I was 16 years old. It was one of those like 18 and under clubs. I don't even think they have those anymore. This was in the 90s. And there was this place near where I live that was 18 and under. So you could be like a teenager, and it wasn't alcohol, but you would just go and, dance, and there was a DJ and all that. So my friends and I were supposed to go that night, and my friend who was, I don't believe I had my license at the time, but my friend who lived in my neighborhood, she was, I think, like a year or two older than me, and she had her license. So she was driving us that night. And right before we were supposed to leave, she got a flat tire. And that's where I believe that this was a sign for me not to go that night. Because if I had never met him, my life would have been a lot different. And although I am so happy with my life now, and I wouldn't want to change that, there were so many years after meeting this person that I wish I could erase. And to be honest, I don't have a very clear memory of it, because I think I was so traumatized by this relationship that I have blocked out a lot of it. So this is going to be a little bit of a therapy session for me today. But also, like I said, a little bit of a warning for people who are maybe in a bad relationship right now, or just, maybe you can relate to some of the things that I'm talking about. But yeah, so my friend got a flat tire and we weren't going to go. But, being 16, 17 years old and wanting to, meet up with guys and friends at the club, we got that tire changed and we drove on the spare tire to this club. And that's where I met him that night. And he was a little bit older. I think I was 16. I think he was 18 or 19. But he was still in high school, because I believe he was in like the foster system. And so I think there was like, he had been like held back at some point. But anyway, he was still in high school, but he was a little bit older, 18 or 19 years old. And I mean, he was very tall, very handsome, very good looking. And, so that night we met and exchanged phone numbers and we started dating, and things were okay for a little bit. But then just crazy shit started happening with him, and he would be like super fun and outgoing and really fun to hang out with one minute, and then he would just be like the most depressed, dark person. It would be like night and day sometimes. And then I remember he was living with a guy that he went to school with. He was living with this kid and his family. They were fostering him. Even though he was, I guess, over 18, I guess because he was still in high school, he needed a place to live. So he was living with his friend and his friend's family. And I remember his friend's mom calling my house. And back then we didn't have cell phones. It was all house phones, landlines. And I remember her calling my parents' house, and I answered the phone and she asked to speak to my mom. And I could just tell in her voice like something was wrong. And so my mom got on the phone, and she had like such a serious look on her face, a serious tone. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? And I think at this point, we had been dating maybe for a couple of months. And when she got off the phone, she said, she needed to talk to me. She needed to tell me something. And I was like, what happened? And she said, D tried to kill himself. And I was so young and like naive back then. I was just like, no, like this he wouldn't do that. Like it's got to be like some sort of mistake. Like that's crazy. And so come to find out he was bipolar, and I guess he went in for like a psych evaluation and in a mental institution, and they diagnosed him, I guess, had been unmedicated, so he would have these, extreme highs and lows. And so anyway, he got on medicine, and then at that point he seemed to be doing much better. I feel like that was a lot for me to take in at that point, and I feel like our relationship kind of fizzled out after a while, and we went our separate ways for a couple of years, and I dated somebody else. And then when I was about 21, I remember again, I was going out with my friends, and I just remember like feeling, it's so weird the things that you remember. I just remember feeling like I shouldn't go out that night. And so I went out with my friends and we went downtown, and we were in this area where there was like all these bars and clubs. And I just remember seeing him and he saw me. And so we ended up like reconnecting, and we ended up dating again. At this point, I was 21. I had just started doing hair. I had just graduated from cosmetology school the year before. I was still living at home with my parents. And unfortunately, there was some things going on in my family at that time. My parents were actually having a rough patch in their marriage, and I decided to move out very abruptly. I got into a fight with my dad and I moved out. And at the time, D had an apartment that I think that I helped him get. But I moved out, moved into an apartment with him, and I didn't talk to my parents. I talked to my mom sometimes, but I didn't talk to my dad for about a year during this time. My parents were having issues of their own, and I just wanted nothing to do with him at the time. So I moved in with my boyfriend, and that's when things just really took a turn for the worse. I was smoking weed almost every day, drinking almost every day. I was just doing things to just like mask how I was feeling. I was very depressed because of what was going on with my parents. And in turn, I went on antidepressants, and I was smoking and drinking, and I gained a lot of weight really quickly in about 6 months to a year. I think I gained about 30 pounds when I was 21. And I also started having a lot of issues with my boyfriend, and I found out that he cheated on me, and he told me it was because he wasn't attracted to me anymore because I had gained so much weight. Actually, he said, it's because you're fat, point blank. And I will never forget that, because nobody should ever be treated like that, period. But especially from somebody who you're in a relationship with. If you really love someone, you love them unconditionally. And if they are going through a rough time and maybe they do gain some weight, there is obviously much nicer ways to support them. And, you never just cheat on them and then blame it on them because they've gained so much weight and they're fat and you're no longer attracted to them. So that really just like added insult to injury because I was already like super depressed. And so I ended up moving out of that apartment into another apartment of my own with a roommate, which didn't last very long. And somehow he ended up moving into my apartment with me. I mean, it was just such a chaotic time. I just remember like never knowing what was going to happen, like always feeling like some shit was about to go down. He was going to cheat. There was going to be drama. He would go out, not come home, and I wouldn't be able to get in touch with him. I would catch him doing all kinds of crazy shit in the apartment. I just felt so trapped and just so like I couldn't get out of my situation. And I was still not on great terms with my parents, but I was starting to speak to them again. But I still just was like, my pride wouldn't let me, go home at that point. I was like, no, like, I have this apartment and I'm going to make it work and everything's going to be okay. And then I remember specifically there was this one night where he didn't come home and I was calling his phone probably all night. He was not answering. And I think I finally fell asleep and I got a call like super early in the morning, like 5 a.m. And it was a police officer. And again, immediately I thought something happened to him. And my first gut reaction was like, is he okay? Like, what happened? And the police officer said that he had been arrested and he was at the precinct and I needed to come pick him up. My thought was he got a DUI or he would always get into fights at bars. And so I thought maybe he got into a fight and got arrested. And the officer told me that he had gone home with a girl that night. So apparently, I don't know if she was just super drunk or if she was drugged, but she woke up with him and she didn't remember much, but she believed that she had been raped. And so she called the police and they came and they arrested him. And this police officer is telling me I need to come pick him up. And I'm like, no, no, I'm not coming to pick him up. He's like, you have to come pick him up. I just remember the officer being like very like pushy about me like coming to pick him up. And I was like 21, 22 at the time. And I was like, this police officer's telling me I have to come pick him up. I mean, I tried to say no, but he was making it seem like I didn't have a choice but to come pick him up. And I don't remember why that is, or maybe I just felt like that at the time. So I went and I picked this motherfucker up from the precinct, knowing that not only had he cheated on me again, but he had possibly raped a girl. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And so I believe I picked him up and we went back to the apartment. And I just remember like locking myself in the bedroom. And I remember my mom being there. So I must have called her at some point and she came over. And I just remember like just not being able to get out of bed. I was just like, I felt like my life was over. I felt like things couldn't possibly get any worse. And this motherfucker had such a tight hold on me. He would like play up this fantasy of like, oh, we were high school sweethearts and we found our way back to each other. And, I just need to get myself together. And it was always like, he was going to do better. He was going to try harder. He was going to go back on his medicine. He was going to do this. He was going to do that. But he like made me believe in this fantasy that we were meant to be together, and we kept finding our way back to each other. And I believed it for a little while, and then I couldn't take it anymore. And I was becoming violent towards him because I was starting to literally hate him so much. He would get me so angry that I would just throw things at him. And I think I like threw a cordless phone and like hit him in the face one time. And it was becoming just so toxic and so ugly. So I couldn't pay for my apartment anymore. He was doing absolutely nothing to help me. So I remember having to move out of the apartment.
Thank you so much for listening. Show me some love by sharing this episode, and be the first to know when new episodes drop by following the show wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube and follow me on social media at Mommy You Said the F Word.